they tell you he's
Howdy,
always
folks.
been
I'm
working
back.
together, as if he had nowhere else to
Power,
go or change.
internet went out
On
for a
this
brief
show,
moment.
if you ever watch it, you know we try to
But
follow
I'm
the
back.
evidence, the facts, the
It's
numbers. You can add the
Farm
adjectives,
Sim
the
22,
opinions
Prairie Farm
yourself.
Mission 4X,
So I will tell you
and
as
B
a
Grain Farm
factual
Park
matter, the
23
scale,
Bravo,
the number
because
of
of
projects
the
and
unexpected
self-enrichment efforts by Donald Trump in
interruption.
the first term were much smaller.
I looked up, my chat was
So who's
disconnected. I
paying
don't
for it?
know
Well,
what
to some
happened,
degree,
but
all of us,
we did
the
have some
American
storms
taxpayer,
earlier
but
today, so
some people aren't
that
paying for
probably
it.
had a lot to
They
do
are the
with it.
Trump believers. One invested $500,000 into that coin I just mentioned and has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's kind of incredible.
So I'm back.
It's almost a legal scam, they said, in discussing their Trump losses to the New York Times. Now, one of the other problems in our current era is how so many things get put immediately into a kind of partisan polarization machine. So if you talk about something that's just a fact, a sitting president is abusing their power and reach and influence to take money from people who have a lot less. That's just a general fact I just described and mentioned in the reporting. Some people would say, oh, is that an anti-Trump thing or an anti-Republican thing? No, it might sound bad for Trump, but it's just an old, classic, almost pathetically familiar example of why you need strict rules governing the people in power, that's government. And generally, if you look over history, there's been a belief that you want to find people who also have good ethics so that they won't constantly be testing what they can get away with. And I can name you people in both parties, John McCain, Barack Obama, who had those kind of ethics. And voters tended to respond positively to that. But this isn't a partisan thing. Take Chris Christie, longtime Republican, also a former prosecutor. So he has a record of, he would say, caring about the law. And he says this isn't just bad, this isn't just petty, this isn't just unfortunate for America. He says it's something deeper left unchecked, that it is a kind of Putin, Kremlin-style Trump corruption.
He and his family believe they are entitled to this. This is an entitlement to them. They believe when they came back and won this election the second time, that gave them license. Quite frankly, when you look at the scale of this, here's another thing apparently that Donald Trump learned from Vladimir Putin during his first term. This is Putin-esque type of corruption and self-enrichment.
Putin-esque corruption and self-enrichment. And that's a Republican, Chris Christie. Over at Fox, where they often try to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, they also have clearly some level of information about what conservatives and a lot of their viewers think, because they're calling it the biggest grift of all time. You can see that headline, scrutiny over Trump business dealings with him and his sons who've been enriched by this. There's also scrutiny on the pardon of this Binance founder. That's one of these firms where he's the richest man in crypto and is a critical business partner to the Trump family's crypto venture. I want to just slow down and tell you what that headline means. The person they chose to work with, that firm and some of those tentacles, has previously been found guilty. So of all the people you could choose to work with, this isn't someone who just has allegations or smoke and fire.
Hey,
no.
Shine, Bug Y. How you doing? Thanks for joining the stream. Shiner,
a very real question, a potentially impeachable issue.
How you doing today?
In exchange, whether this was a kind of federal government bribe. Now, it's often been said that the Supreme Court gave Trump extra leeway. They did. And that the president, if he chooses to, can get away with more of these things than other members of government. And they can. But we are watching a midterm election coming that might have a whole shift of power in Congress. Donald Trump could, and we know it would bother him if it happened, become the only president to be impeached 3 times, because there are real questions about potential impeachable offenses when you talk about the use or abuse of government powers, the huge pardon power, billions of dollars coming into the family, and all of it wrapped together. And that's just what we know before an impeachment committee or a Jan 6 committee or subpoenas and witnesses and testimony. This is just what we know from the dogged work of the New York Times and other journalists and MS Now. We've got reporters looking into this as well. This is what we know just from that, without subpoenas. We don't have subpoena power here in the news media, or sometimes we wish we did. Trump, however, seems to be bragging about helping those people in crypto, even amidst the headlines they're losing money.
Hey, why are you looking at new phones again?
Yeah, my phone's been acting weird. It's slow, and the battery dies super fast, and it keeps overheating. Before you buy a new phone, check if it's not malware first.
On my phone? Seriously?
Yeah. My friend in IT said slow performance and overheating are big signs.
Okay, so how do I check?
Just run a free scan with Malwarebytes.
Okay. Installing it now.
It looks for malicious apps and files running in the background, and it removes them instantly.
Wait, it found something. I've never installed this.
Looks like that's your problem. Solved.
Oh, okay, it's going.
So?
My phone already feels faster.
And that's why millions use Malwarebytes. It's easy to use, and it actually works.
If your phone feels slow or weird, don't replace it yet. Run the free Malwarebytes scan first.
Caught 3 different women staring at my husband at dinner last night. This man's 62 and getting more attention than he did 10 years ago. Okay, so my husband has never cared about skincare, like ever. But a few months ago, I started noticing changes in his face that honestly worried me. The long work hours, the stress, it all showed up right under his eyes. The bags, fine lines, the dull skin. He just looked exhausted all the time, even on a good night's sleep. He kept brushing it off, but I could tell it was getting to him. So I started researching natural solutions for men's skin, and that's when I found Forge on TikTok. It had a ton of followers.
Every time I see a crypto guy where they dropped an investigation, they said, "You're lucky I'm president."
That might be true. Those people who in any other independent government system would be under investigation or worse are lucky. But remember, what are they under investigation for? Sometimes abusing and defrauding everybody else. This is the 1% story, the Epstein class story. It's the same thing we've been reporting on and telling you about, except now we have a president who's just so blatant about it. The people who should be investigated are lucky, and everyone else, in Trump's telling, are unlucky, losing money. It goes beyond crypto, which I know can sound like a little bit of a newfangled, kind of confusing virtual place, even though the money some people have lost is real. There's also new revelations about this ring that Belgian diamond sellers gave to Donald Trump as a suspicious, unusual gift after he waived tariffs for Belgian diamond imports. Remember, bribery is an impeachable offense. It's one of the enumerated impeachable offenses in our Constitution. And again, we're talking about real money here, not symbolism. The ring had reportedly over 300 diamonds, over 50 sapphires, over a dozen emeralds, and 6 rubies. Might say it looks a little gaudy or gauche. That's a matter of taste. As a matter of value, it is well above the gift limit that binds all members of Congress, for example. Most public traded company CEOs would be fired on the spot for trying to pocket something like this related to their business. That's payola. What I'm telling you is Donald Trump is falling behind even the lax business standards of American Wall Street. There's also a plaque with a solid gold base from Apple that probably is worth quite a bit less. A Rolex desk clock, I should say, and a gold bar from Swiss business leaders. I'll remind you, there is a senator in prison right now for taking gold bars, Senator Menendez. He happened to be a Democrat. Again, if you care about these issues as an American, or as someone who thinks we should have nonpartisan ethical government, you'd be against gold bars when they go to a Democrat or a Republican. Only one of them, though, Donald Trump, is getting away with it right now. And there's the jet. Trump took the gifted plane on his first international voyage to a NATO summit, and he's promised those on board a luxury that nobody's ever seen before. That might be his typical hyperbole, Politico reports, but there's a wood panel interior, tan leather seats, carpets, big screen TVs. Trump's White House says this is all fine, no problem. And I can just tell you here in the real world of news and facts and journalism, almost nobody believes that. I showed you Fox News trying to hedge their bets a little, saying, well, this might be too far. I've shown you Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan, and other conservatives who aren't bound up in the partisan Republican machine, who, whatever you think of them, have talked about this as a grift, as elitism, as unfair. And the bill may be coming due. There's also the focus on Donald Trump's stock trades, where, as I mentioned, the crypto stuff can seem kind of vague. Here you have the very direct question of whether he is timing his personal enrichment towards things that only he can do and he knows about, like his unilateral trade. And again, if he is doing that in a manner that abuses government power, or is a quid pro quo, that would be impeachable. Notice I didn't say jailable. He's got a lot of immunity for anything that goes near his official duties. Terrorists probably do. But it certainly is the kind of thing people have been removed of. People have been removed for less, quite frankly. There's a disclosure form that shows Trump bought hundreds of stocks, including in tech giants, the day before he then pulled back his tariffs, which he and anyone in Wall Street knew would help juice those stocks. On April 8th last year, Trump bought over 300 stocks in billions of dollars, including companies directly affected by this international trade war: Nvidia, Amazon, Apple. The next morning, he said, it's a great time to buy, and halted his tariff.
The stock market went on another wild ride today. Stocks were mostly sideways until midday when President Trump posted on Truth Social that he was authorizing a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs, with amazing moves in some tech names. Nvidia up 18%, Amazon up 12%, Apple rallying as well.
Those rallies were huge, some of the largest jumps in recent history. The overall top 500 stocks went up about 10%. I'll remind you, that's considered a good return for an entire year, let alone a day. And there were larger spikes in the stocks Trump bought, which, as I reminded you, are the kind of international trade-related stocks that would benefit from the tariff policy. Now, let me tell you exactly what the question is. Did Donald Trump abuse inside information to enrich himself? If the answer is yes, again, it's up to Congress to decide whether they view that as an abuse of power, an abuse of office, or whether they view that as one among several abuses of power that he enriched himself. Do they view any of it as quid pro quo of government favors? Were there other people, non-presidents, for example, his family, other staff, lobbyists, lawyers, aides, who were involved in this, who could actually be prosecuted? Again, if there is bribery, those are the questions. Now, some people, they dislike Trump so much, they say, I'm sure he knew. Well, you could be sure, but you would sound pretty presumptuous. Because in law, you'd have to have the elements of the crime. One of them is the mental state. Now, I'll report for you, the White House says...
Just like he is, calling all Democrats communists.
Involved in
not
the
a single Democrat
stock purchasing.
in office
So
that's
if
a
that defense
communist.
is true,
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't even know
someone
what
else had
communism
good
is.
timing, but didn't
Just
benefit
like
from
any other MAGA.
information, then
You
that
can
would be
watch
what we call
thousands of
offense to that.
videos on YouTube
The timing
when
is
they're
so
asked, what is
suspicious.
communism? They
And
don't
the other
have any
activities that
fucking
Donald
clue
Trump
what
is
it
taking
is.
have been so blatantly self-enriching. And his public statements talk about helping people in crypto in order to get benefits from crypto for his family, that any investigator would have to look at all of this in totality. A few months later, Donald Trump discussed corrupt trading in pretty specific detail. So he was thinking about that kind of stuff,
I think they would
yet
Google
rejecting
it.
or accusing
They're afraid
a
of
Democrat,
facts,
Pelosi.
so they don't Google it.
To happen by she knows exactly what's going to happen.
Because then
what's
they'd be
gonna
like,
be announced
damn,
by stock, and then the stock goes up
I
after
didn't
the
think it was,
announcement's
so that's what
made.
it was.
It's going to be investigated.
You know what's going to be announced. You buy the stock, it goes up. Was he talking about her? Was he talking about a process that he'd already participated in or encouraged others to do so? Those are questions to be investigated. There is, of course, a reason he was discussing it. There's a provision that apparently Trump didn't like that was trying to address some of this. He attacked a Republican who introduced it. Hawley had to go on Fox and basically assure Donald Trump, by way of his preferred medium, Fox TV, that any Trump trading would be unaffected.
Well, I just found out that the bar down the street will give you 2 free drinks if you put your token or your chip in the tip jar. You know what? How about you guys build it out?
A number of people who are opposed to banning stock trading had said to the president that he would be covered by the bill. He'd have to sell Mar-a-Lago and sell assets. Not the case at all. The president and the vice president, all their assets are totally exempt.
So this is an important way to fight corruption, but the president is exempted. All he wanted everyone to know. The bill that ultimately moved forward had that carve out for Trump. I can tell you, we're reminding you all this because so much goes on that it would be easy to lose track, but this would go into any impeachment investigation about why there was already such an active discussion of exempting it for a law that ultimately did not pass. And why is it bad if everyone else does it, but okay if Trump does it? So Trump's account was buying those stocks, timed towards things that he knew he was about to do. And he fought against it. Ban that very type of activity. I want to bring this all into our orbit tonight because while they want you to think nothing matters and they'll get away with it all, There's a heck of a lot of evidence. The winds are changing. Conservatives are mad about this. That even Trump was worried that Congress might then, under Republican control, do something that it would certainly want to do without him exerting influence, which is stop this kind of self-dealing while gas prices and everything else is up and people are struggling. That's our special report. We've got special guests. We're back in 90 seconds. On to MS now. Analyst Jason, we tried to show what's new and there's blowback. Along with the history that's easy to forget, they want to distract people with wrestling, Trump's feuds and fights. But the history is instructive, and a serious Congress could look into this.
Right. Not only a serious Congress, but a committed Congress of both Republicans and Democrats. It's a shame when you have some members of the party who are so disgusted with Trump's behavior that they're willing to quit a la Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then you have people like Josh Hawley who claims that he is vigorously against this sort of double dealing and insider trading, but has to go on groveling on Fox saying, no, Donald Trump, it doesn't count you. All of the gifts, Ari, all of the behavior, not just of him, but his entire family, is not only a corrosion of how our government is supposed to work. It is a national security issue, it is an ethics issue, and it's the kind of thing that even when Donald Trump ever leaves office, if he ever leaves office, the level and the tentacles of this corruption will now run so deep that whoever follows him, if they care, will have to fire and eliminate dozens of people, hire so many new inspectors generals in order to get rid of all the other people who help facilitate this corruption.
Yeah, and he's very clear about seeing himself as a booster. If he didn't have all these stocks and all these deals and all these conflicts, he might just be a very pro-business president, which is fine. People can decide that. Bernie would be seeking more oversight of Wall Street. Trump might boost Wall Street fine. The problem is the more we learn, we're just scratching the surface, the more it looks like conflicts. Here he was with Dell. Take a look.
Go out and buy a Dell computer. He's not doing it for that. But I'll bet his business, Brad, has gotten even bigger. I have a son that loves their laptop. I have to tell you, no wonder Dell. We're going to get him that money back one way or the other.
Jason?
If this were a mob movie, this would be the time that all of the federal agents they're taking their headphones off, right? The way in which Republican members of Congress, even his own supporters, look, I understand Donald Trump's branding for 20 to 25 years that he is an excellent business person. But the problem is, more often than not, he's putting money into the pockets of people who pay him. They're not really getting a good return on their investment. The people who do things for Trump, whether it's the head of UFC is like, hey, we lost money doing this Trump thing. The crypto people, the people paying his son $500,000 a year to be a member of a club in hopes of possibly getting access to the president. There's not even a return on the investment and the graft and the grit. And that's part of what makes this so disgusting. He's not a good business person. He's not giving people anything that they want, but he has turned the United States and all of its agencies into not only his personal piggy bank, but his ATM to the rest of the planet.
On the politics, why do you think this has drawn more backlash? It would seem that we have this triumvirate. I've mentioned people who dislike Trump have 100 reasons, but a lot of conservatives or former Trump voters, they only have like 3 or 4. And lately, it's been Epstein, Iran.
Well, the reason, Ari, is because you can't have people paying $7 for gas. You can't have massive unemployment. You can't have people dealing with terrorists and then go on television bragging about the diamonds on your wrist, which is essentially what the president's doing all the time, right? You can't talk about his wealth and not look like he is deeply insensitive about how the people who supported him are continuing to suffer. That's where the issue falls in. But for me, my concern is not necessarily with the voters in the fall. It's the lack of sort of oversight by members of Congress. It's the lack of anything being said by government agencies. It's the idea that Kash Patel's girlfriend can be paid to sing songs to Belgium while they give him, rings with 300 diamonds in the shape of Superman, while at the same time he's cutting deals to get U.S. players to play. I mean, it is a conspiracy theorist and corruption investigators' dream come true, and yet we don't hear enough about it from members of Congress trying to reel him in.
Yeah, and it may be, look, he remembers the blue wave. He remembers the second 2 years of his first term. He remembers losing badly and leaving the way he left. He remembers it all. no one can accuse Donald Trump of not having detailed memories of his shame, humiliation, and anyone who dared criticize him. It may be that we're watching someone who is grabbing, knowing that if they do lose the midterm, particularly the Senate, that the next 2 years might look very different on all of these issues. I'm running out of time to read this other breaking story, Jason. Great to see you. Appreciate it. A big story also rocking Washington. Democratic Senate nominee Graham Platter is facing a new reported sexual assault allegation. This is from an incident that allegedly occurred in 2021. Politico reporting the 41-year-old Maine resident, Jenny Rassicott, stated that during the course of what was an on and off relationship, Platter entered her home uninvited and deeply intoxicated, that he forced himself on her, and that she repeatedly told him to stop. Politico also interviewed another individual who corroborated the story, and the reporters say they reviewed documents and notes from the accuser's therapist. That can be important in piecing together a timeline, because Politico reports that this allegation predates Platter's rise now as the nominee. Prescott was one of several women who previously spoke to the New York Times in a different article, and at the time used the word unsettling to refer to some of Platter's behavior. We should note that he has denied these new allegations and released a video statement, which you can see an excerpt of here.
Any accusation of non-consensual behavior, you're taking the time to reflect on the best path forward.
Glad to referencing the best path forward there. As I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, it's a big important story. First, obviously, for the alleged conduct and the impact on that individual. And second, as a Senate candidate, there is a deadline looming over whether Democrats would stick with him if he drops out, what would happen, his name on the ballot, in a race against Susan Collins that's been seen as one of the keys to Democrats winning back the Senate. For all of those reasons, this is clearly a major story. I want to bring in New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg, an MS Now analyst. Welcome, Michelle. Your view first on, thank you, your view first on where the allegations and the substance of this is, with the political story not only advancing with the Times story, but including what are legally very serious allegations against it.
Well, the Politico story is utterly devastating. Her story is credible. It's multiply corroborated, and I think that Brett Plattner needs to drop out. There's nothing ambiguous here. His campaign is completely non-viable. There is 1 week left in which Democrats can legally swap out their Senate candidate, and this whole debacle is so shameful for all of the people that Graham Plattner encouraged to put their faith in. All the people that Graham Plattner asked, told that they should believe in him. Because, I was in Maine, I've interviewed Plattner. He really did tap into this hunger among voters for a new kind of candidate. And people were willing to overlook some skeletons in the closet because they thought that there was something fundamentally good and decent and righteous here. And they climbed out on a limb for him all over the state. And he had every reason to know that that limb was going to be sawn off.
The Democrats now, as I mentioned, have this deadline. Politically, Maine is a place where a lot of the Senate Democratic leaders viewed it as finally a potential flip, with everything that people know about Susan Collins, someone who has claimed to be an independent, but on key issues time and again helped the MAGA agenda and the Supreme Court agenda. Where does that larger prism fit into all this?
Well, I think that Maine Maine voters, I think, if all the polls are right, Maine voters do not want to re-elect Susan Collins. But in order for them to not do that, they need a viable alternative. And it's still time. There's still time in Maine to give them that. Although, again, there's so much kind of blame and fault to go around. The people who recruited Plattner reportedly failed to do much due diligence about him, and sort of didn't do the normal sort of deep dive that you would usually do into a candidate to see what their vulnerabilities are. I also think some blame belongs to Chuck Schumer, who was so determined to clear the field for Janet Mills, the 78-year-old governor of Maine, that he and the Democrats in Washington encouraged other people not to get into the race, who might have, you never know if someone's going to take off, but could potentially have spoken to this hunger among the electorate for new kinds of candidates. And it's just created an absolute debacle in a state that was, in other ways, a very favorable terrain for Democrats.
Yeah, interesting point there as well, because you're talking about something the Democrats have struggled with a lot, which is when they think they have an electable person, but they push so hard, they're undermining the kind of actual grassroots democracy in the state. And in this case, as you say, the party's not pleased with the option it has as of tonight. Michelle Goldberg, thank you very much. We're going to finish a break. We wanted to hit that big story, and when we come back, Andrew Weissman joins me as we look at the Trump pardons and more impact from Jack Smith warning about Trump in the midterms.
I'm really nervous. I have a toothache, but I'm afraid of dentists. Bring a ton of great dentist on doctor. Deepest cleaning ever. No way.
It's time for Operation America 250. Yeah. We're gonna go see Young Washington in theaters this 4th of July. Yeah! Now they expect us to walk through the front door and pay $30 for 2 tickets. But we're gonna take them by surprise and sign up with Angel for $15 and get 2 free tickets to Young Washington.
2 tickets to every Angel movie coming to theaters. We're talking The Brink of War, Runner, Angel and the Bad Man, Drummer Boy, Hershey, and Steerway D.
And those are just the ones coming out this year. Those tickets aren't included with Screaming Angels One Library. You know it. For just $15 a month. That's the America 250 offer.
Let's storm the theaters!
With Angel tickets for Young Washington. Celebrate America 250 with Angel Premium. Get instant streaming access and 2 tickets to Young Washington. Theaters July 4th.
The gorgeous 4-armed warrior standing across from Sunny and killing every person she's ever fought. 3 months straight.
We all lived through July 4th. The president wanted to mark today with use of his presidential power to pardon. And he pardoned some criminal violators of laws that try to keep the air clean, as well as a major political donor. The Times reporting on that. Clemency power, undermining environmental laws and helping a political supporter who pleaded guilty in a fraud. This relates to other stories we covered tonight, the question about whether there's even a pretense of using these powers for the American public or reviewing cases in general and saying, hey, here's why this one should have been treated differently, rather than just rewarding friends and allies or undercutting environmental laws. A prominent defense attorney has told The Atlantic that with intermediaries and other sort of cutouts for about $2 million these days, you can have a pardon. I'm joined by Andrew Weissman, former FBI General Counsel and Mueller prosecutor. We wanted to hit this because corruption has almost sort of become the theme of the week. And there's no, like I said, pretense or defense or cover story even for some of these. It's America's birthday. It's he can do it, so he's going to do it. And is it alarming that pardons are, through a cutout and some euphemisms, allegedly for sale?
So I think the pardon power is essentially great.
example because you can sort of take off the table the legality, because the pardon power in the Constitution is really pretty absolute, with the only open issue being whether the president could pardon himself. So the issue for me is it just is so revelatory of who a president is, because you get to see what they care about. Do they have a process where the most deserving people are the ones who get this beneficence, this extraordinary ability to be outside of the legal system? Or are you seeing it being used for violations of the Clean Air Act? And by the way, the president has said, oh, these are people who are just trying to get their cars working. No, that's not what was charged. That's not what was proved. These are people who deliberately, over and over again, sold ways to violate the Clean Air Act by having kits that would be put into a car so that they would no longer be complying with those regulations. They'd be polluting in violation of the law. This is a business that they ran. The complete contrast to, by the way, in prior administrations, I was part of the team that prosecuted the Volkswagen case, which was the antithesis of getting a pardon. They were prosecuted. But the president is also pardoned crypto, cyber, the largest healthcare violator at the time, Philip Performance, was pardoned. Politicians, fraudsters, and obviously people who are close to the president, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone. So if you want a sense of what the president cares about and who they think is deserving of this kind of largesse, you really can look at the pardons, and that's true for prior presidents as well. But there's nothing like what we have seen with President Trump in his first term and in the second term.
Yeah, Jack Smith famously prosecuted this president. He spoke out in his first journalistic interview, which was in demand by all the outlets, print, TV, and I mentioned it was a big deal. Nicole got that, and I think a lot of reviewers have seen maybe parts of it, or if they watched the whole program that day last week. But I want to underscore what he said about, of course, the Jan 6 pardons, because he was very much leading the effort with Trump driven from office and seen at one point as this. Unlike it was Republicans on our side that victim. And then to go into this upside down landscape we have now, where the worst of the worst is indicative of that
There's the obvious costs that just recidivism. These are people who committed their crimes even in the interest of Donald Trump, and if we don't bring them right back on that's one message to that.
There's actually a lot about that interview I wanted to ask you about. On that core point, he's saying when you reward this stuff, you will get more, meaning that it is a non-conspiracy theory, non-fringe concern that this could become a weaponized issue for future crimes.
Absolutely, and you don't even need to get to the slush fund. The idea that these people not only would receive a pardon for engaging in criminality that in many cases included attacking police officers. I mean, just to be clear, we are not talking about sort of violent trespassing here. We all witnessed it. If you just consider that, just the pardons, and not the fact that the president wanted to create a fund, and still may, where they are financed, just think of that, and the president saying that the prosecution of those people was a grave national injustice. Those are the words of Donald Trump. They are also the same words that have been parroted by Todd Blanche, who has an upcoming confirmation hearing to be the head of the Justice Department. He's the acting head now, but we have somebody who will be installed, if he is confirmed, who has described January 6th and what those people did after trial, after being given all due process, that this was a grave national injustice. To me, that is such, as you said, sort of like the world put on its head.
Yeah. He also spoke very forthrightly about narrative time and you think about what we could take from the holiday we all just celebrated this weekend at a strange time for civic life. And I wanted to get your views on that. So we're going to play Jack Smith, his message to the public about why this is a time to bravely fight and not give in, with Andrew when we come back.
I didn't mean it. Please help me.
Barkeeper, you're so kind. I can keep working now. Sorry, barkeeper.
Right now for free.
Here in New York. I'm Antonia Hilton in today for my friend Nicole Wallace. A deeply disturbing new report published in the last hour about Graham Plattner is shaking up the crucial U.S. Senate race in Maine. Politico has new bombshell reporting from a woman who dated Graham Plattner, who says Plattner forced her to have sex with him nearly 5 years ago, despite her repeated objections. From that reporting, the woman, a 41-year-old Maine resident named Jenny Rasico, detailed the alleged incident to Politico in 3 interviews over the course of the past 2 weeks. Politico also spoke with a man Rasico dated and confided in the years after the alleged incident and reviewed documents, including emails between her and her therapist and messages between Rasico and an acquaintance whom she warned against getting involved with Plattner years before he ran for office. Rasico said she had an on and off again relationship with Plattner, who is now the Democratic Senate nominee in Maine, for more than 2 years before he entered her rural Maine home uninvited one night in late 2021. Deeply intoxicated, and forced himself on her while she repeatedly told him to stop. She said she cut off contact with him after telling him the encounter was not consensual. I remember him grabbing my pelvis and being really forceful of me, she said. I remember the specific moment where I thought to myself, like, this is no longer my choice. Plattner has denied the allegations, telling Politico, quote, these allegations are troubling, serious, and false. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically untrue. Graham Plattner released a video just moments ago in which he says he's taking time to reflect on a path forward. Take a listen.
I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false. Over the last 10 months, I have been deeply humbled by the faith Mainers have put in me. You have welcomed me into your homes, into your places of work, into your restaurants, into your houses of worship. You have shown that a different kind of politics, one that puts the interests of people over corporations, is not just possible, but is inevitable. This movement we have built, the largest movement
history of Maine politics. The hundreds of thousands of grassroots donors and the supporters across the ideological spectrum, we were united in a love of Maine, a belief that our politics must change, and a focus on defeating Susan Collins. So, regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful the political reality will inflict, we are taking the time to reflect on the best path forward for the state that I love, the people that I love, the movement I belong to, and the goal of defeating Susan Collins. Those were the goals when we launched this campaign, and they remain my goals today. On June 9th, 154,058 Mainers, the most in primary history, voted to reject a broken politics beholden to Washington and the donor class. They voted for hope, for change, to take back our economy, to take back our power, and to take back our Senate seat. Throughout it all, you never turned your back on me, and I will not turn my back on you now. Every one of you deserves to see that vision come to fruition and see Susan Collins defeated. And we will use every tool at our disposal to do so. As Maine goes, so goes the nation. As always.
So you said the online sober community, they just opened their online shop and they dropped.
As always, thank you.
I want to bring into this conversation MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell and host of the Fast Politics podcast, contributing writer for the New York Times, Molly Jong Fast. Also with us, my friend and colleague, MS Now anchor and correspondent Eamon Mokaddin. It is great to have all of you guys here with me. I want to start with you, Michael, to break down what we know at this point about this reporting. And I know that you're out to your sources on the Hill. Tell me what you expect to hear or what you might already be hearing from them as they process these allegations from Politico.
Yeah, serious allegations from Politico. The latest shoe to drop when we talk about the controversies that have been dogging Graham Plattner's candidacy and campaign. As you laid out, this is an allegation involving a woman who said that she met Graham Plattner back in 2019 when they met on a dating app. The alleged assault happened in 2021. Graham Plattner said he wanted to come over and see her. They were in a consensual relationship at that point. She said she was not in the mood, but Graham Plattner then let himself into her home, walked up her stairs, found her laying on a couch. He then got on top of this woman, and she had said, please get off me. She didn't. She was not interested in engaging at that moment. She also says that he smelled of alcohol. She then removed herself from the room and went towards her bedroom with Graham Plattner following her. And then this woman tells Politico that he, at that point, forced her to have sex. Afterwards, he had fallen asleep, and in the next morning, he had left her home. Again, these allegations happening in 2019. We are still waiting for reaction from some of Graham Plattner's top supporters up on Capitol Hill, of which he has many. Graham Plattner, as you just played, denying these allegations, but notably saying that he's going to figure out how to move forward. The big date that we should all be paying attention to right now is July 13th. According to Maine law, candidates have until the second Monday in July, which is, again, a week from today, July 13th, where they can still remove themselves from the ballot when they can drop out, but the party can then nominate a replacement to be the standard bearer for that party. Notably, Janet Mills has still been on the ballot throughout this entire time. She got 20%, nearly 20% of the vote during that Democratic primary. Still a substantial amount of percent for somebody who wasn't even running, but was still on the ballot. So certainly with Graham Plattner saying we're going to assess how to move forward, drawing a lot of eyeballs in terms of that July 13th date. But again, right now, no indication of how he plans to handle this, and we are still waiting to hear from some of his top supporters up on Capitol Hill.
Eamon, what did you make of that video from Graham Plattner? Because while he's denying these allegations, he's also, interestingly, at one point in the video, he starts to speak in past tense, as though he's about to, or may potentially, in the minutes, hours, days, suspend this campaign.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that Graham Plattner right now certainly has a credibility problem, and a lot of that has to do with what he says in previous statements when allegations come forward. He'll come forward and say there's nothing else to come out, only for something else to come out, and that makes it harder and harder for his allies to politically defend him. And you're talking about the video that he just made. There's a few elements there that I thought were important. One, the part that he says, I'm going to reflect on the way forward, and to Michael's point about what that might mean politically for him.
But towards the end of that statement, he also adds the part about how many voters voted for him the most in Maine's history, and the fact that he does not want to betray the people of Maine who voted for him. And he said they voted by him, and he's not going to betray them. So again, it's a bit of an open-ended statement. What does that mean? Is he going to do potentially, in the eyes of many, the right thing of stepping aside and keeping the door open for somebody else? Does that mean he's going to stay in this race and fight these allegations? But to Michael's point, and to the point that Politico makes, these are different allegations, and for a few reasons. One, the way Politico described it, saying he has not previously been accused of sexual assault, I think is a different type of threshold in terms of allegations. Although he's been dogged by other allegations of conduct and misconduct with women, the way it is characterized by Politico is that this is the first time he is being accused of sexual assault. But also the other important part in this is the receipts that this woman has. Yeah. The fact that she had told other people about an interaction with Graham Plattner that made her extremely uncomfortable and, according to Politico, crosses that threshold. That is something that I think we're seeing for the first time that gives so much more credibility to her story and to her allegations, even if Graham Plattner is denying them. And if it's one thing that we have, talked about through the Me Too era, is believe women, and certainly women who have told other people about their experiences, I think crosses a threshold that I think is going to put a lot of intense pressure on Graham Plattner's campaign, but also on his allies who have stood by him throughout previous allegations.
To that comment about the sort of post-Me Too era and the debate that sort of happened in the Democratic Party after this, the series of allegations around Graham Plattner, part of, I think, what made it complicated for some Democrats to fully believe the woman who was at the center of the last round was that she was associated with right-wing politics. But this woman, I want to read part of what's out here. One of the reasons, she says to Politico, I didn't come forward sooner was the huge moral conflict that I had between supporting his politics. So she is saying, I actually agree with Graham Plattner, his positions, his politics. She's clearly more on the left, but not supporting him as a person. I just want the truth out there. I just want people to have a whole scope of who he is as a person. Molly, I want your take on what we're hearing in this new report from Politico, but also the fallout that you're expecting now as Democrats try to sort through what they need to do on behalf of the voters, the American people, because of this.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's one thing to have to have this first tranche. Remember, there was an earlier group of women, and now this is yet another tranche of allegations. And I think that, when you look at the polling on this, I just was looking at a poll that said 75% of people said that if there were more allegations, he should drop out. And I think this constant stream, and even if you see the polling for him since the last batch of allegations, his numbers have gone down. I do think, I'm baffled that the vetting process for this candidate, number one. I mean, this is just, the fact that they're just constant, allegations, I think really is a sign that there just was not proper vetting here. And, you may, again, align with them politically, but the truth is, this is not a candidate who is ready for primetime on any stretch of the imagination. And Democrats have, there's a feeling in the party that candidates like this are not for the party. And, there has been a backlash to Me Too, but it has not been like this. The other thing I would say is that clearly this is a person who, at least from these allegations, that when drinking does not remember their behavior. That's what all these allegations say. So another reason why, I don't know how we got here, but this is the 17th, July 13th deadline seems to be key. And I think you see a person who is really coming forward when there's still time for him to come back, which I think also shows that there's some feeling of this was just what she had to do. And the fact that there's so much on the women here when clearly this is, multiple women, multiple allegations, is just very upsetting.
Yeah, Molly, you can tell from her conversation with Politico that she's clearly wrestling with the consequences of her coming forward, of her putting her reputation, her own personal story out there. She's got that conversation with her therapist that Politico reports on. And you can tell this is something that she's dealing with in real time and that she cares, it seems, about our democracy, and it makes you wonder about timing here as well.
Sure.
What do you think the path looks forward?
Well, the other thing I would say is in the text messages, she's so protective of him. You know, he's clearly got this PTSD, which reminds me so much of how women will just, you know, the way the culture protects men, right? I mean, she's saying, well, he's got this PTSD and it's not exactly, you know, consensual. I mean, my God, this should not be how it is. Like, this is so upsetting, you know, as a woman, as a feminist, as a mother of a daughter, like, it's not how it should be that women are saying, you know, trying to defend, trying to make excuses for someone, you know, she is saying in these allegations. And so I think it's really upsetting. I think that he, at least you see in this video clearly a sense that he kind of has, you know, he knows what's happening. And again, who knows what's going to happen. But in my mind, it would be very hard for me as a Democrat to vote for someone like this.
You know, Eamon, when Graham Plattner was on with our colleague Chris Hayes, he told him that nothing else was coming. Chris asked him directly, is there something else out there? Will there be more allegations? And he said no, he brushed it off.
This is the crisis that Graham Plattner has created by his own doing, because throughout the allegations that have come forward over the course of his campaign, and there have been a few different buckets of allegations, whether it was the Nazi tattoo and whether he knew what it was, the previous allegations of misconduct with women, and now these sexual assault allegations for Politico. Every time there is an allegation or a question about his conduct, he either says it was because of, as in the case of the tattoos, he was drunk, he didn't know what he was doing, it's attributable to mental challenges that he had or mental health challenges that he had. But then he would try to close the chapter by saying there shouldn't be anything else to come out. As you said, when we had that interview, he said there were no more allegations. And for somebody who's had a troubled past and has acknowledged that he's had a troubled past and is a flawed candidate, there have been more than, you know, ample moments for him to come forward in full disclosure and say there have been a lot of mistakes that I have made, with as many specifics as you can, so that the people who are voting for him, the citizens and the residents of Maine, are aware of what those allegations are. Now, does that mean he has to come forward and name every single person? No, that's not the case. But there's always this sense when Graham Plattner came forward to defend himself that his apologies, while he tried to project them as being sincere, always kept the door open that there still may be more allegations. And at some point you have to wonder, when is it up? Well, you know, enough is enough in terms of all of these problems that are being, you know, coming forward as a result of the reporting. And I think that is the challenge the Democrats have. People have staked their reputation by standing alongside Graham Plattner, people who have endorsed him and have stood by him when these allegations are coming forward in multiple different venues. And now I think it's going to be a very challenging 24 hours for him to see how he goes forward from here.
Yeah, I mean, there's the people who put their reputations on the line and they endorsed him and traveled with him and backed him up after the last round of allegations. But there's really two groups of people who I feel most heartbroken for, which is the woman at the center of the story, and then the voters of Maine, who so many of them have been crying out, wanting change, desperate for a younger person to represent them in the Senate, someone with new ideas to bring to the table. Democrats have been trying in that state to strategize about how to get rid of Susan Collins for a long, long time, and finally believe that they had a glimmer of hope here. And I imagine they're feeling crushed right now. Michael, you know, I know that you're still waiting to hear back from sources on the Hill, but give me your best understanding of what happens now. There's this July 13th deadline. What is it?
So Graham Plattner would have to withdraw from this race by July 13th, 1 week from today, according to Maine law. I have it pulled up right here. You would have to withdraw by the second Monday in July. Again, that's next week, in order to allow the state party to then appoint someone else to take the place. Because if you think about it, if you were to withdraw after July 13th, then there's no confirmation that Democrats would actually have a nominee on the ballot.
So if Graham Plattner were to withdraw within a week by July 13th, then the state party would have another 2 weeks by July 27th to appoint another individual to take the torch for the party and be on the ballot as their nominee. Now, of course, Janet Mills comes into a lot of folks' minds, the former governor of the state, somebody who has in the past won statewide for the governorship, somebody who's on the ballot during the primary, brought in nearly 20% of the vote, and she has very slyly made it clear that she was still on the ballot and she still pulled in a fifth of the vote. So it's a big question. The two things we'll be watching now actually withdraw by July 13th, and a week from now. He opened the door to it in that video, and then who does the state party choose to take his spot by July 25th? So in theory, they could choose someone other than Janet Mills. Sure. Yeah, the state party can choose whomever they want in that position, as long as, and this is of course the key part, that Graham Plattner withdraws himself by 5 p.m. on July 13th.
I was going to ask that really quickly, and I think this is the dilemma potentially for the Democratic Party in Maine. Do you potentially replace Graham Plattner with somebody whose policies Graham Plattner espoused, which is what the majority of people who voted for Graham Plattner in the primary wanted, or do they go with somebody who got the second most number of votes? And those are two very important talking points, because when you think about what the voters of
all right, I gotta get me some coffee.
Knowing how flawed of a candidate he was, knowing about these allegations, and still not the recent ones from today,
all right,
but
I'll be right back.
Ones, and still showing up in record numbers to vote for his policies, knowing that he's a flawed candidate, you can make a compelling argument that you have to try to find something within the Democratic establishment in Maine that represents closest to Graham Plattner's viewpoints. And there were stark differences between him and Janet Mills. And Janet Mills, although being, receiving the second most number, the standing to be able to say, I got the second most number of votes, I got a fifth of the overall number of votes from the primaries, I've been elected to state office. And that may also then have a backlash because it's not the policies that people wanted when they went to the polls and elected.
Yeah, and Janet Mills does have these serious, vulnerabilities, right. Both because voters were concerned about her age. She would be the oldest senator if she came into office. She had different conflicts with Native American communities in the state. I mean, there were just a number of challenges. She really didn't travel the state to the extent that Graham Plattner did. So in addition to the sort of ideological battle, there was also sort of like a structural battle going on between the two of them. And I think that's going to leave the party with a lot of questions. Molly John Fass, thank you so much for starting this hour off with us. Michael Schnell, please stay close by because if we get more reporting, we're going to want you to come back over the next 2 hours. And Eamon is going to stick with me. When we come back, Donald Trump putting his thumb on the scale of the World Cup, calling in a favor to get a suspension of an American. The world's biggest sporting event has suddenly become a political story, all thanks to Donald Trump. Trump confirmed today that he asked FIFA President Gianni Infantino to review the suspension of American star forward Prairie, who received a red card last week for tonight's World Cup knockout match against Belgium. And in an extraordinary move, FIFA did lift that suspension. Trump basically put it all out in the open this morning, admitting he involved himself in the decision. Watch.
I spoke to Johnny, who is highly respected, who's produced the most successful World Cup in history by, they say, 4 times. This isn't just a success. I actually said, Johnny, we've got all these games. Each one is turning out to be a Super Bowl. I saw the play, and I'm a person that loves sports, was a good athlete, and I understand sports really well. And that wasn't a foul. That wasn't even an infraction. So, yes, I asked for a review by FIFA. I spoke to a man who's highly respected. If they wouldn't allow, a top player, maybe the best, maybe among the best players on the team to play, I think it would have had a big stain. And I related just that few. I didn't tell him what to do. I can't tell him what to do, but and I don't believe he made the decision. I think it was a committee that made the decision, and they made the right decision.
Dare any man over 60 to put beef tallow on his face every night for 3 weeks and not look 20 years younger and sharper. I dare you. Your wrinkles will disappear. Your eye bags will deflate. Your jawline will sharpen. Your skin will get thicker and firmer and healthier than it's been in 20 years. And you'll look in the mirror and see a man who looks 10 to 15 years younger staring back at you. Every single man who's tried it says the same thing. I wish I started sooner. Gorge, beef, tallow, balm. Takes 20 seconds a night. Shop yours now while it's still at 50% off.
Free yourself from prying eyes.
The close relationship between Gianni Infantino and Trump has increasingly drawn scrutiny over the last year, with Infantino personally inventing a FIFA Peace Prize to bestow upon Trump at the same time that Trump was ordering lethal strikes in the Caribbean, and with FIFA opening an office inside Trump Tower in New York. This latest show of preferential treatment is leaving many U.S. fans feeling conflicted about cheering on the return of their star player, and the rest of the soccer world left outraged. Belgium appealed the decision to allow Balogun to play this morning, hours before the high-stakes match is going to take place. That appeal was denied this afternoon by FIFA. I want to bring in national sports columnist and professor of journalism at the University of Maryland, Kevin Blackistone. Also joining us, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs during the Obama administration, political analyst Rick Stengel is here, and Eamon is still here at the table with me. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. Questions over this red card put aside for a second. Just how much has the political influence seen throughout this entire tournament been a stain on the World Cup?
Well, it's been a stain that's not going to go away. The U.S. is fortunate to beat Belgium this evening. It's going to be with an asterisk on that win, because that's what Donald Trump has done. He has stained this entire event. Look, I said before the World Cup came here, after it was certain to be here, after it started, I wrote it. This country, with the Trump administration, is unfit to host any global sporting event, given its unethical and immoral treatment of our foreign neighbors and citizens. And we've seen it play out throughout this entire World Cup, from a referee who was not allowed to do his job here because of his nationality, to the way the Iranian team has been treated as if there's some sort of terrorist cell, and now you have this. I said that we often say that game respects game. Well, corruption respects corruption too, and that's exactly what we've had here. And maybe the worst part of it is that this isn't a FIFA event that has been corrupted in the bidding process, which we hear so much about and have read so much about. But now the actual game itself, that is going to be played before tens of millions of people, has been corrupted. And maybe the outcome of that has been changed because of Donald Trump's desire to put his thumb on the outcome. That really hasn't happened. But that is happening.
Gonna go make a pot of coffee.
Eamon, I want to read for you what the president put out a statement today. Some people thought was a little too late. FIFA's judicial bodies are independent. He said they operate autonomously, apply the FIFA disciplinary code, and decide cases based on the applicable regulations and specific facts before them. Their independence is essential to the credibility and integrity of football. Your reaction here? I mean, look, I know that you're basically like MS Now's resident soccer expert. For any of our viewers who didn't already know that, Eamon is the person who explains everything that's going on in soccer to me. So, I mean, do you buy into this?
It's not sense. And the reason why it's not sense is Kevin's point was very important about how FIFA has conducted itself throughout this tournament. The reason why that's important is because if FIFA was able to stand up and protect its own referee that was denied entry to the United States, if FIFA was able to stand up to Donald Trump and say, look, you're hosting this tournament, we would like for you to treat the Iranian team with the respect that they need, that athletes were around the world deserve. We would like for you to allow them to stay in this country. If they were able to at least express that, you would believe the statement from FIFA today that, hey, our bodies are independent and we don't cave to political pressure. But what we've seen from FIFA throughout this tournament, and what we've seen from Infantino particularly, is that he caves to Donald Trump's pressure. And because he has allowed Donald Trump and the United States in this current climate to do what it has been doing, he lacks the credibility to be able to stand up there and say that this was an independent decision. It's not just the lack of credibility that he brings to the table, it's the timing of how all of this played out. Referees make decisions all the time. They get wrong decisions all the time. That's not just the sport of soccer. They've been trying to improve that. They've been trying to evolve the new process with virtual assistant referee. But this is not like that case is. What happened in that particular red card opened the door to for Donald Trump to intervene and intervene in such a vulgar way. And he has now taken ownership of that intervention.
He really has.
He's taken
posting
ownership
on
of it.
social.
Correct. Yeah. And so the fact is that even if FIFA wanted to pretend that
Coffee's being brewed.
the pressure,
Food.
he did intervene in that process. And I think even this statement that was put up by FIFA,
given everything that Kevin, that Eamon just spelled out there, has it basically become a metaphor for what's going on, not just here domestically, but across the world, for the way that Trump is operating and others around him respond to the pressure that he keeps applying?
Yes, Antonio, more than a metaphor. I guess the expression I've been thinking about is there's no honor among thieves. As both our guests suggest, I mean, FIFA is not a holier-than-thou organization. The former head of FIFA had to resign for corruption. It's a byword among organizations that is able to influence people. What Trump did is absolutely in character for him. But I would say Mr. Infantino is the real culprit in the sense that I can try to bribe somebody around the corner, and if the person says, I don't accept bribes, get out of here, then that person is honorable. Trump tried to bribe him, he accepted the bribe, and it also does something terrible to something that we've talked about on this show for many times before, American soft power. The U.S. as the host of FIFA was meant to be like a great kind of milestone for American soft power around the world, and because of Trump's behavior, because of all the things that Eamon had said as well, it's become instead a byword for American corruption, for lack of American equality, and that's just a sad thing.
All right, whole panel is sticking with me because there's so much more to talk about with this story and how Trump went out of his way to get this suspension lifted for someone he otherwise would have easily deported from this country if he had had things his way. More on that after a break.
Quit TRT, started Marsmen. Got leaner than I ever did on injections. 4 years on TRT. Weekly injections, constant blood work, shrunken balls. And you know what? I still had the belly. My testosterone was high on paper, but I was converting a good portion of it to estrogen because TRT doesn't address that. It just floods your system and hopes for the best. I found Marsmen through a guy in my gym. He showed me his blood work. 742 natural, higher than my medicated levels. I transitioned off TRT, started Marsmen. Here's the difference. Marsmen doesn't just raise testosterone. It blocks the conversion to estrogen. It lowers SHBG, so more testosterone is actually usable. It reduces cortisol, so your body stops storing fat from stress. Tomcat Ali at 1,000 milligrams, Shilajit at 400 milligrams, boron shown to significantly reduce excess estrogen. 3 months later, testosterone at 680, natural. Belly fat finally responding, and my body is producing its own testosterone again, instead of being dependent on a needle. The clinic keeps calling, I keep declining. Before you commit to needles forever, try what your body can do naturally. Marsmen has a 90-day guarantee. Get your free gifts, free shipping, and 50% off for life.
Have you received a letter?
We have a very significant problem.
What has happened, Papa? Evander? Linus?
Oh, no, I haven't heard anything.
Deported from this country if he had had things his way. More on that after a break. Rick and Eamon are still here with me, and we are talking about what pretty much everyone has been talking about all day, which is this FIFA controversy with Trump putting his thumb on the scale to reverse this suspension. Eamon, you know, one of the things that I have found most ironic about this whole thing is that Balogun is actually a birthright citizen. His parents are Nigerians. They were actually living in London. He happened to be born in the United States and has chosen to represent the United States in the World Cup. But this whole thing comes just days after Mr. Trump was outraged that the Supreme Court did not work with him to overturn birthright citizenship.
I mean, it's so ironic.
They can't.
It's so ironic.
You have to put an amendment process in the Constitution. You just can't overturn an amendment without the amendment process going through, which requires all the states to vote on it. Repealing an amendment? The only amendment to be repealed was prohibition. You can't just sidestep an amendment.
Born on American soil when his mother was visiting the United States.
Trump's an idiot. He doesn't understand. He understands that he just wants to change it, and he can't. He can't change it without an amendment to the Constitution.
Scenario, by the way, that Stephen Miller keeps complaining
Either appeal the amendment or add another one. You can't just take a Sharpie and say, "Oh, this is no longer any good." That's not how it works.
It's the fact that the United States right now is also in the process of arresting and trying to deport 10,000 people for the last 2 weeks. And so you have this like split screen reality of what America is. The beauty of immigration is representing and making America succeed on the world stage in a tournament, while at the same time the people who don't have that privilege and aren't in the spotlight being rounded up and being deported by this administration. And so I think it speaks volumes to where the United States is, and specifically with this administration, that it is working to undermine the things that make America successful on the world.
Yeah. Kevin, I want your take on this split screen. This administration trying to undermine, leave immigrant communities across the country living in fear, and not just their attempts to overturn birthright citizenship, but also to denaturalize people who have earned their citizenship here in the country. Juxtaposed with the fact that you have immigrants constantly in sports and every other field succeeding in spite of that sort of rhetorical and cultural onslaught. And then there's just sort of what soccer represents to the world, which is it's the beautiful game. It is the most egalitarian sport in many ways. You know, you can be born into poverty and violence and rise up in that sport and completely change your life, your entire family circumstances. That is the story of so many people who are on the field playing in this tournament right now. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the World Cup, when you look at it, after a few days, you realize that it's really a representation of so many things that go on in this world and in this country. Issues of immigration, issues of nationality, issues of race and culture. That's what we see before us right now on rampage. But to see
it would have been the end of my life which I had known before on the outside. It wouldn't come out falsification of everything. There has never been a Christian nation. You don't live in one now.
Thank you. Finally a passion. Speaking the truth.
Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology. That's the basic definition. So, which Democrats are far-right, ultra-nationalists, Sean? Kamala Harris is a far-right, ultra-nationalist. It's the dumbest of them. Well, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, the front-runner of the Democratic Party, is right-wing, in your opinion. Stupid as shit. You notice how there are actual far-right people in this country, right? Including, not to mention, the president, right? The far-right, ultra-nationalist, authoritarian who is in charge of the country at this moment. That doesn't bother you, no? That's stupid as shit.
We're not saying he is a dictator, we're saying he's trying to become one.
That's not how a dictator would work. That's not how a fascist works. That's just what the you're familiar.
Adolf Hitler.
We watched a documentary on History Channel one day. Now you think you're a fucking expert. She was in this
Love it.
I don't think homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does. Leviticus 18:22, chapter. I want to ask you a couple questions. I mentioned the son of slavery is sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. She's a Georgetown sophomore, speaks fluent Italian, always great table when it was her turn. What would a good price for her be? While thinking about that, can I ask another? My chief of staff, Lord Gary, insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly says he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? Here's one that's really important, because we've got a lot of sports fans in this town. Touching the skin of a dead pig makes one unclean, Leviticus 11:7. If they promise to wear gloves, can the Washington Redskins still play football? Can Notre Dame? Can West Point? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John? I like how you call homosexuality an abomination.
Finish it. I wish they would have finished it.
Here's some fun facts about the American Civil War. There were about 8,500 successful attempts made by Confederate vessels to make it to the Union blockade. After the war, Robert E. Lee said about 19 Indigenous army surrender. It was, quote, without parallel in the history of the civilized world.
Oh, yeah.
General Ulysses S.
Because usually they get executed.
General George H. Thomas. Thomas, who was the lowest reporter of Rosecrans, was appalled at how he thought.
Well, there's any time in the history of the world when a failed insurrection or rebellion has occurred, all the people responsible were executed almost every single time. And maybe they shouldn't have been executed, but they definitely should have been placed in prison and definitely never allowed to vote or run for public office at any level, local, state, federal, period. But Johnson was handing out pardons like Trump is right now.
And when Grant and Thomas met face to face at his headquarters, Thomas was coldly unwelcoming to Grant, even though Grant was tired, sore, and hungry and wet after his long journey from his headquarters to Chattanooga. Roughly a quarter of the British population was employed by the British textile industry. And since Britain was a massive consumer of southern cotton, the Confederates had to help break the blockade, but it was taken. Here's some fun facts.
Maybe it's not safe that
There is no moral equivalence between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden's never been convicted of a crime. He's never been found liable for sexual abuse. There is no moral equivalency between the orange turd that you voted for and Joe Biden. So are you going to remain on top of it, or are you just going to play whataboutism every single time Donald Trump does something despicable? And pardoning violent criminals on January 6th, JD, is despicable. Why can't you say that? It's horrible. Why can't you admit it?
Well, first of all, violent criminals and murderers are two different things. Two FBI.
Did you hear that?
You are not capable, are you? You are
Oh my
not
God.
capable of, by the way,
How
a
stupid
violent
can
crime
you
can
get?
be considered murder, okay? Violent crime is murder, so I have no idea what the hell you are talking about.
Exactly.
You keep going back to Joe Biden. You are not capable of saying what Donald Trump did was horrible. You should not have pardoned those who beat police officers and were convicted of seditious conspiracy. Why can't you say that? You're like a broken record. Why won't you repeat after me? Because I know you know it's wrong, because you admitted it a few weeks ago that if you said it, you would call it out, which you're not doing now. Why can't you admit it was not just wrong, but despicable for those who attacked Capitol Police on January 6th to be pardoned? That question has nothing to do with Joe Biden, it has nothing to do with Democrats, and it has everything to do with the news of this week. Why won't you admit what he did was wrong?
Why are you disturbed? Why are you changing my words? I've already said 3 times or 4 times that you've asked me that.
The first thing you said.
I agree with you.
The first thing you said on this show, JD, was not saying.
That has nothing to do.
No, it does. No, it does. It has everything to do with it because the topic is Donald Trump's pardons, not Joe Biden's pardons. But the first thing you did was say, "Well, what about?" That's the first. Now, the first thing you said was, "Let me give you a lesson, JD, on people that I'll respect and people I don't respect." For example, the first thing you said was, "Brian, I agree with you. I called you a few weeks ago. I was hoping you wouldn't pardon the violent criminal he did. I think it's despicable. I think it's wrong. I did disagree with a lot of the pardons of Joe Biden. I would say you're right. Thank you for your honesty." But the first thing you do, like so many other MAGA clowns that call into this show, and yes, JD, you are a MAGA clown, the first thing you want to do is talk about Joe Biden. The first thing you want to do is talk about Joe Biden's pardons. The first thing you don't say is his pardons of the January 6th insurrectionists and those who committed terrible crimes were terrible. That is your way of thinking. You're always looking for an excuse to defend Donald Trump. There is no moral equivalence between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden's never been convicted of a crime.
After Charlie was murdered, this administration...
Is Trump correct when he says the United States beat Nazi Germany in World War II, or Caroline Levitt, right? She says it's because of the United States that France isn't speaking German. Professor Putin had attempted to use histories. A statement like that, either from either one, requires context. That's so important in history, is to look at context. And there's 2 ways we can interpret did the United States beat Nazi Germany. One is looking at U.S. war materiel. And in that sense, they've got something there. But if we're talking about United States boots on the ground, no. Let's look at some of the data. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States has 24 million workers within workforces, and they provide roughly 2/3 of all the munitions and all the war material used to attack and defeat Nazi Germany in World War II from 1941 to 1945. On the New York docks, the doctor's commander, he was dead. This is Master Sergeant going to defeat us. Floods people don't want to wait up. They are you.
Jefferson Davis, exhausted but still defiant, fled southward, hoping somehow to rally the Confederacy from Texas.
Maybe that with the devoted band of cavalry, I can force my way across the Mississippi, and if nothing can be done, then I can go to Mexico and have the world from which to choose a location.
On May 10th, at Burtonville, Georgia, Union cavalry caught up with him. With the arrest of his president, the Confederate government ceased to exist. Davis was sent north to Virginia under heavy guard. Northern newspapers spread the false rumor that Davis had been apprehended wearing women's clothes. North and south, he was reviled as the villain of the war.
Which misconception about Davis are so strange in this?
Killed him. Well, they wanted him dead. Not here. Not now. We talked to the feds this morning after found out that we told them for nothing. I'm sure. The man's changed. Why sit down? Now watch it. Sandy! What rules are you asking about this constitution?
I was asked to conduct a test for gunshot residue. We call it GSR of the defendant. What did you conclude? If Mr. Elliott had large amounts of GSR in his hands, of course.
Mr. Loomis, are there ever any false positives for GSR?
There can be, generally due to transference. Say, for instance, you were in a police station. There might be a few stray particles of GSR in the interview room if a detective had been at the shooting range, but it would be trace events. Nothing like this. Mr. Elliott's hands and clothes were covered in GSR.
So given the amount of GSR you found on the defendant, you were able to dismiss the possibility that this could have been a false positive.
That's correct.
How many cases would you say you've had?
Say hundreds.
Is one of those cases called people whose right to lose?
Yes, but...
Objection, relevance, it goes directly to the competence of the witness, Your Honor. Overruled. Isn't it true that the judge in the Ruiz case threw out your entire report?
That was one case. Like I said, I've worked hundreds.
I'd like to enter Defense Exhibit A, Your Honor. Is this a copy of the report you filed in the Ruiz case? The one that was thrown out by the court?
Yeah.
And why was it thrown out?
The defendant had elements of GSR in his hands, but I failed to consider that he could have been exposed to them because of his work as an industrial engineer.
So right before this case, you filed a report that was so flawed, it was thrown out. And now you want this jury to accept your expert opinion?
Well, it's not just my opinion. I'm sorry, this is professionalism. My supervisor, Dr. Tan, has been double-checking all of my work since the Ruins case. This is why her initials are at the bottom of my report in this case. Her initials?
See if I can fill up my 3 production sites with potatoes. I think once I buy field 5, I'm going to turn that into a potato field. That's what I'm thinking. That's going to be a big potato field. Over 500 acres of potato.
Resources that high-priced defense attorneys have.
Well, if you represent the me as an officer of the court, this is an honest mistake.
Absolutely. I didn't know about the police case, so I had no reason to scare the supervisor's business. My apologies to the court. And Mr. Howell, Your Honor. The jury's
Mr. Howell, if you'd taken the continuance the court had offered, then perhaps you would have had time to properly examine the document. The evidence stands. If you have any further questions for this witness, ask. Otherwise, it's almost 4:30.
What role, if any, were you asked to play in this investigation?
I was asked to conduct tests for gunshot residue, or as we call it, GSR, on the defendant.
What did you conclude?
That Mr. Elliott had large amounts of GSR on his hands and clothes.
Mr. Loomis, are there ever any false positives for GSR?
There can be, generally due to transference. Say, for instance, you're
I
at
gotta
a
go
police
to this
station. There might be a few string particles of GSR in an interview room if a detective had been at the shooting range, but it would be trace amounts. Nothing like this. Mr. Elliott's hands...
In the mid-1930s, a young John Wayne carved his place in the frontier, riding through dust, danger, and the raw beginnings of the Western hero we know today. These early films reveal the grit, the stride, and the rising fire of a trailblazer in motion. See the full introductory episode in the video linked to this short. Check out the full playlist on the home page, John Wayne's 1935-36 Frontier Charge, The Rise of the Young Trailblazer. In the mid-1930s, a young John Wayne carved his place in the frontier.
Can I ask Destiny right now, would you like to apologize to Laken Riley's family for her murder, since this open border Democrat policies that you promote? Would you like to apologize to the parents of Laken Riley for the murder of her child?
Virtue signaling is off the charts. I didn't kill anybody, so I'm not going to apologize to anybody for somebody getting killed.
But there are policies.
A lot of people get killed in the United States for a large variety of reasons. If anybody gets killed, especially based on the background of this guy definitely should have been reported. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But hey, listen, if you want the border stuff to be cleared up so much, why don't you tell Republicans to stop turning into a game in Congress and actually approve legislation to get more funding down for the border? Right now, it's Republicans pull the plug on that because Trump wants to maintain the one little bit of electoral advantage he might have, which is you guys start trying to stir stuff up over the border. And it's funny also how you frame this all like, oh, they're trying to stop human smuggling. No, they're not. They're just trying to secure the border. Humans are going to be smuggled all over the place, regardless of whether it's into America or not.
I asked Destiny right now, would you like to apologize to Laken Riley's family for her murder, since it's open border Democrat policies that you promote? Would you like to apologize to the parents of Laken Riley for the murder of her child?
Virtue signaling is off the charts. I didn't kill anybody, so I'm not going to apologize to anybody for somebody getting killed.
But there are policies.
A lot of people get killed in the United States for a large variety of reasons. If anybody gets killed, especially based on the background of this guy definitely should have been reported. I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
Is this you discussing Indian blood? We're going to judge people by whether they have Indian blood, whether they're qualified to run a gaming casino or not?
That probably is me, absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, if you look at some of the reservations that you've approved, you, sir, your great wisdom, have approved, I will tell you right now, they don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like to Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians, and a lot of people are laughing at it, and you're telling how tough it is, how rough it is to get approved. Well, you go up to Connecticut, and you look.
The story was fantastic, and then also the character I played.
Is this photo haunted or not? Let's find out. First, we're going to play with the exposure a little bit, see if anything pops out.
That's it for the potatoes.
Not seeing anything. Let's try the contrast. That's fine. Let's move on to the negatives.
I'm not seeing anything pop out. Wait a second. Hold on. There's her right hand, and I think her left hand down here. There's his left hand. There's two right hands here. That's got to be haunted. That's got to be an apparition.
Is this photo on it or not? That's fine.
Every single billionaire, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, every single one has said AI's coming. It's coming for your jobs. There's nothing you can do about it. And your taxes are going to fund the whole thing. And half the country is like, goddamn, fucking Mexicans. Do you know every billionaire? Every single billionaire.
The dark secrets behind 8 days before filming the pilot, a casting emergency arose when a then unknown Pamela Anderson was pushed out of her central role as Lisa. Early table reads panicked producers regarding her chemistry with the main cast, forcing them to downgrade her to a minor recurring part before she left the series entirely for Baywatch. 7. This casting chaos was compounded when Frances Fisher, originally cast as Jill Taylor, was unceremoniously fired during the unbroadcast pilot. Executives panicked that her performance was too cold and dramatic to match Tim Allen's comedic timing, leading to the midnight hiring of Patricia Richardson, who began filming with zero rehearsal. 6. ABC and Disney closely managed Tim Allen's public image because his past prison sentence for drug trafficking conflicted with his new family-friendly TV persona. 5. Network executives initially disliked the Wilson face hiding gag, but it eventually became one of the show's most memorable trademarks. 4. Jonathan Taylor Thomas became overwhelmed by the pressure of filming, schooling, publicity, and teen idol fame, eventually leaving the hit series early. 3. Thomas's departure caused tension with Tim Allen, who reportedly felt hurt that the young star walked away before the show ended. 2. Richard Karn became Al Borland almost by accident after Stephen Tobolowsky could not take the role, and his chemistry with Allen made him a permanent cast member. 1. Although Home Improvement remained massively successful, Patricia Richardson's exhaustion and refusal of a huge final season offer helped bring the series to an end. The dark secrets behind Home Improvement. 8. Days before filming the pilot, to a large degree, the dark secrets behind Home Improvement. 8. Days before filming the pilot, a casting emergency arose when a then unknown Pamela Anderson was pushed out of her central role as Lisa. Early table reads panicked producers regarding her chemistry with the main cast, forcing them to downgrade her to a minor recurring part before she left the series entirely for Baywatch. 7. This casting chaos was compounded when Frances Fisher, originally cast as Jill Taylor, was unceremoniously fired during the unbroadcast pilot. Executives panicked that her performance was too cold and dramatic to match Tim Allen's comedic timing, leading to the midnight hiring of Patricia Richardson, who began filming with zero rehearsal. 6. ABC and Disney closely managed Tim Allen's public image because his past prison sentence for drug trafficking conflicted with his new family-friendly TV persona. 5. Network executives initially disliked the Wilson face hiding gag, but it eventually became one of the show's most memorable trademarks.
4. Jonathan Taylor, to a large degree, this was a litmus test for Jackson of who would stand with him, regardless of the slings and arrows coming his way, and who would dare question his authority or judgment. The controversy shattered his cabinet internally. Calhoun's allies largely sided against the Edens, while Martin Van Buren skillfully aligned himself with Jackson. In the process, Van Buren strengthened his own position dramatically, while Calhoun's relationship with Jackson deteriorated beyond repair. The final break would come during the nullification crisis a few years later. I'll get into that in a bit, but the political and personal fracture was already in place just after Jackson's inauguration. To a large degree, this was a litmus test for Jackson of who would stand with him, regardless of the slings and arrows coming his way, and who would dare question his authority or judgment. The controversy shattered his cabinet internally. Calhoun's allies largely sided against the Edens, while Martin Van Buren skillfully aligned himself with Jackson. In the process, Van Buren strengthened his own position dramatically, while Calhoun's relationship with Jackson deteriorated beyond repair. The final break would come during the nullification crisis a few years later. I'll get into that in a bit, but the political and personal fracture was already in place just after Jackson's inauguration. To a large degree, this was a litmus test for Jackson of who would, to a large degree,
General Hill wishes to inform you that he is going to Gettysburg this morning with his lead division, General Pete.
General Hill knows I want no fight till this army is concentrated.
General Hill expects no opposition except for some local militia with shotguns and such. Will the general have some breakfast? We have flapjacks and small mount, bacon, wagons of ham, ripe cherries.
Has there been any trouble from the local population?
The men are behaving very well, but there are some local women who claim we have taken all their food. And though they don't claim I haven't paid for it in the good dear coin of mighty Virginia.
We must be charitable to these people, Major. We have enough enemies.
The men have their strict orders, but I must admit those orders would be easier to follow had the Yankees showed charity when they were in Virginia.
This army will conduct itself properly, and you will personally report to me any infractions.
Yes, sir.
Very well.
General Hill wishes to inform you that he is going to Gettysburg this morning with his lead division, General Heath.
General Hill knows I want no fight till this army is concentrated.
General Hill expects no opposition except for some local militia with shotguns and such. Will the general have some breakfast? We have flapjacks and small mount, bacon, wagons of ham, ripe cherries.
Has there been any trouble from the local population?
The men are behaving very well, but there are some local women who claim we have taken all their food. And though they don't complain of our having paid for it in the good dear coin of mighty Virginia.
We must be charitable to these people, Major. We have enough enemies.
The men have their strict orders, but I must admit those orders would be easier to follow had the Yankees showed charity when they were in Virginia.
This army will conduct itself properly, and you will personally report to me any infraction.
Yes, sir.
Very well.
General Hill wishes to inform you.
You literally can't make this up, right? So when MAGA was told to evacuate the Freedom 250 field because of an impending thunderstorm and lightning, instead of listening like the lawful citizens they claim to be, they decided to become a violent mob and force themselves on the field, despite being told multiple times, hey, this is for your safety. Doesn't that sound familiar? When was the last time MAGA became a violent mob? What is it about MAGA that when things don't go the way that they want, they immediately result to violence and becoming a violent mob? What is it? You literally can't make this up, right? So when MAGA was told to evacuate the Freedom 250 field because of an impending thunderstorm and lightning, instead of listening like the lawful citizens they claim to be, they decided to...
Who the hell are you? I'm the snake in the grass. Your cause. And I remember thinking that people...
Alright. Well, I think I'm going to continue this tomorrow morning. So I want to try to get into spring, into March as soon as possible, and buy more fields. Which fields do I still need to buy? Field 5, Field 1, and Field, these two, what is it, 4 and 7? Yeah. Alright. So I think I'll go ahead and shut her down. And start it up tomorrow morning. I'll play some Empire at War. I'm kind of stuck, not recording it, but playing like a practice of it. Okay, so it is 1520, January 2nd, first year of this map. This is Farming Simulator 22, Prairie Farm, Michigan 4X, Ant B Grain Farm, Part 23, Bravo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all later.